Anakin's early years within the Jedi Order were quite rough from a social standpoint, as he barely got along with his fellow classmates, and more often than not, got frustrated with his teachers and those of the High Council, as they limited his lessons and regularly reminded him that he was not ready to move on toward the more advanced classes. This, of course, caused him to hold some resentment toward many Masters of the Order, as he felt they were holding him back. Despite this, there was one Jedi Master that Anakin actually looked up to and held unmatched admiration for. His name was Jorus C'baoth, who, despite holding the Chosen One's highest admiration of, was among the more controversial Jedi among the other Masters and those of the High Council. Both Anakin's admiration and the Council's uneasiness of C'baoth stemmed from his no-nonsense way of doing things, as well as his extreme views that the Jedi knew what was best for those they were supposed to protect, in that rather than act as sideline peacekeepers, the Jedi should get involved directly in galactic politics and just fix the injustices and corruption themselves. C'baoth strongly believed that the Jedi's unique connection to the Force gave them unparalleled insight and inherent superiority over all non-Force sensitives, and because of this gift of theirs, it was their responsibility to create societies and governments that were most just toward the general populaces, even if it meant forcibly bringing down current systems in place. This Jedi superiority philosophy of his swept even into how he walked, marching through crowds with unlimited confidence and expecting everyone else to step aside as he walked past them. He also spoke directly and exactly what was on his mind, holding nothing back regardless of what others may have thought of his opinions on the matter. On top of his steadfastness, C'baoth was among the most powerful Jedi of the Order of his generation. Along with his extraordinary telekinesis abilities, he also mastered some extraordinary difficult powers like Force Meld, where Jedi joined their minds together through the Force, drawing strength from each other and becoming a far more cohesive fighting unit. When Anakin first met C'baoth, he was instantly taken aback at how different the Jedi Master was. He quickly began to admire the man, and hoped to grow up to be just like him when he himself was given the rank of Master. C'baoth was also among the very few Masters that continually made note of Anakin's exceptional talents and achievements in the Force, even to the point of making his own Padawan, Lorana Jinsler, feel bad. After hearing her Master's praise of Anakin for minutes on end, Lorana soon believed that compared to Skywalker, she was just an average Jedi learner in her Master's eyes. Unlike the other Masters and those on the High Council, C'baoth recommended Anakin to go beyond his limits and never hold back his potential, a statement that frustrated Obi-Wan, who believed his Padawan was far too immature and impatient to learn far more advanced Force abilities and techniques. This was very apparent when C'baoth was planning on teaching Force Meld to Anakin. As mentioned earlier, Force Meld was an extremely difficult ability to master, and could even dangerously backfire on inexperienced practitioners. Because of this, it generally wasn't taught to Jedi until they've reached knighthood, if at all. But C'baoth didn't care, and wanted to teach it to Anakin, who at the time was only in his early teens, and had barely begun his formal training as a Padawan. This actually led to a somewhat heated argument between Obi-Wan and C'baoth, as they argued exactly how high Anakin's expectations should be. C'baoth argued that limiting a Padawan as to what they can truly achieve was a complete waste of their gift of being a Force sensitive, and that limiting what they learn early on only limits how much good they can do in the future when they must rely upon their power to help others. Obi-Wan countered by stating that setting too high a bar for a Padawan, especially when they are not mature enough, will lead to problems, as they will only experience failure, and never the healthy satisfaction of steady progression through their achievements, that a good balance was needed to be found. Even with the criticisms C'baoth received on how he did things, and his views on the Jedi Order's purpose, he still remained an admirable figure in Anakin's eyes, who not only agreed with the Jedi Master's actions and views, but also believed he was one that could do no wrong. But C'baoth and Anakin's interactions quickly came to an end when the Jedi Master's proposal for Outbound Flight was finally approved by both the Senate and Jedi Council. Outbound Flight was a project that sought to colonize the worlds within the unknown regions, and ultimately attempt to enter the next galaxy in order to discover and colonize possible frontier worlds for the Republic. The flight included around 50,000 passengers and crewmen, and 18 Jedi ranging from Masters to Knights. When Outbound Flight made its final stop within Republic-controlled space and launched into the unknown regions, C'baoth slowly became a near-dictator within the massive vessel. He began to ignore the written rules within the vessel and started to implement his own way of doing things, even ignoring the captain's orders, who originally had formal leadership over the vessel according to the Senate. He then created an unofficial Jedi training school as he sought out Force sensitives within the 50,000 passengers and convinced the families to give over their children so that they could become future Jedi. It became quite apparent that while C'baoth did genuinely wish to colonize the unknown regions and enter the next galaxy, he may have had a secret agenda of creating a second Jedi Order, one that would hold his views of how Jedi should act and look over those they were to protect, and either establish this new order within the next galaxy, or even one day return back to the Republic and possibly overthrow the old order with his own. But these possible plans of his never came close to fruition, as Outbound Flight was intercepted by Thrawn, who didn't want the foreign craft to enter his people's territory within the unknown regions. Despite being given a chance to go around the Chiss's territory, C'baoth refused and decided to push on through, even if it meant initiating a battle. A battle did ensue, but not in C'baoth's favor, as Thrawn was able to disable the main offensive and defensive components of Outbound Flight. Injured and with full realization that he was defeated, C'baoth fell to the dark side and began to force choke Thrawn across space as the two were communicating through their ships' respective channels. While Thrawn was almost killed, he was saved when radiation bombs were deployed and fully destroyed Outbound Flight and nearly everyone on it. And with that, C'baoth's life came to an end, but his legacy did not. At some point prior to his departure on Outbound Flight, Palpatine was able to obtain his DNA and later clone the Jedi Master. Once fully grown, the clone was turned to the dark side by Palpatine and tasked in guarding one of the Emperor's many secret storehouses. Eventually, the now Grand Admiral Thrawn would discover the Dark Jedi and convince the man to join him, using him for his campaign against the New Republic in his attempt to take back the galaxy for the Empire. The C'baoth clone would eventually die at the hands of Mara Jade, however, when confronted by her and Luke Skywalker about a year later. Thanks for watching this video. Help support the channel by becoming a member on our Patreon page, and be sure to subscribe for more videos like this one. And as always, may the Force be with you.